situation with builders right now is that sales is harder, sales is taking longer, and it's easier to lose a client in the process right now than in other economic times, right? It used to be pandemic. If you could answer the phone, man, everybody was there, right? Right? Everybody would, um, uh, if you could answer the phone, essentially you got the job. Well, leads are a little bit more scarce. People are a little bit more skittish. I think this still has to do with the economy, overall pricing, interest rates. It really doesn't matter, though. What we want to have is we want to make sure that we have a safe, sustainable, predictable company in all economic scenarios, right? Doesn't matter really what the reason is that things are a little slow and buyers are a little skittish. We want to maximize our ability to get the jobs that we want, when we want them, how we want them, right? And so what we want to address is going back into making a real connection with the client and talking about a trust builder, a relationship builder, a process that makes that connection, right? If you can have a process, and I don't mean this in the sterile sense of like a hospital process that is devoid of emotion and feeling. In fact, I want there to be lots of emotion and feeling in what we're talking about. Um, we can make it so that this becomes part of your moat. Has anybody ever heard of that? You know what a moat is around a castle, right? In business terms, they talk about what is your moat. What is the not easily duplicated part of what you do that sets you apart from somebody else? What is the secret sauce that you do? What is it that protects you from your competitors? What is it that makes your competitors irrelevant and you become a market of one? And so this becomes it by talking about it as a process or as a system, setting the intention of what we're trying to accomplish. You can vary how you do this, but it's really important that you have something that you do on purpose with intentionality every single time, where it's not going to simply be based on how you feel during the day, your circumstances, your emotional level, and your personality and good looks, right? Because we all know that clients, once they see you and talk to you, will fall in love with you and how handsome and beautiful you each are. We all know that that's already the case, right? Of course, because you are the best looking crew out there, right?
That's why I'm on
And
this call twice a week.
but we need to go beyond our personality and good looks. I had a conversation the other day with a client, and I said, "Have you actually ever had any official sales training? Have you ever gone through any kind of sales training?" And he's like, "Nope. It's all just been me trying to figure stuff out." Is that true for you guys as well? Have you guys ever like really gone through any official sales training class,
No,
course, anything like that before?
no.
Okay.
You guys.
Woo!
Woo!
There we go. And I really think that there can be many good things about going through sales training. There are some really great books, including the Little Red Book of Selling. If you don't have that on your shelf as a introduction to selling, I highly, highly, highly recommend it. The Little Red Book of Selling by Jeffrey Gitomer. Tyler's grabbing his copy right now. It's just a little helpful primer, and it's silly. I've met the author of this book. I think I met him. I was at one of his live conferences. I think I actually met him. He's a cool guy, and he's very funny. It's done in a lighthearted way to get you to get through the book. Right. This is not heavy duty material here. So I really, really think everybody should have something. Everybody should be increasing their sales skills. Now, when I say sales skills, people think immediately that it's your ability to close the deal. Isn't that what sales is? The tactics and the words, the magic words and the stuff that get you to be able to close a deal. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about sales as a process that ultimately ends up with a deal, but it's the entire scope of how you're communicating to a client, how you're understanding what the client's needs are, how you're coming to represent your solution to their needs, how you're communicating value, how you listen and understand the client's motives. And so this is so much more than simply saying, hey, if I go to this sales training, is it going to give me a bunch of magic words to close the deal? And so I'm actually anti that. I'm anti sales process that's towards thinking everything I'm saying is about closing the deal. Okay. With that said, there is a point at which we're saying we know what our process needs to be. We know how to get people from point A to point B to point C. And so we talk about getting the client over the next step, selling the next thing, giving them a benefit or a reason for why they should do the next thing with you. So there is a bunch of mini closes before you get to the big close, right? Before you get to a PSA sale or before you get to the contract sale. And so we are recognizing the fact that there is intentionality, that there is a process both that the client needs to walk through and that you need to communicate. But I want to make the difference here that we're not just talking about magic words that make it so that you can close the deal. Can you raise your hand? Everybody understand where I'm going with that?
Yeah.
And I think that that makes sales a lot less, or sales training or sales talk a lot less icky, right? Because that's the thing we don't want to be. We don't want to look like we're just money grubbing sleazeballs that just are waiting to pounce on unsuspecting victims and take them for all they're worth, right? We're not used car salesmen. We're not manipulating. We're not trying to get people that can't afford us to buy stuff that they can't afford to put on their trinket shelf, and nobody wins, right? Can we all agree on that part too? That we actually have integrity and we're not trying to hurt people in what we're trying to do. Okay. One of the big shifts in our thought process over this last year as the economy and things slowed down is an understanding that we are really truly trying to build trust. The differentiator for the guy that will get the job versus not get the job at the levels that we're talking about, not the lowest price oriented people. That's not who we're talking about. We're not talking about service people. We're not talking about restoration companies. We're not talking about other reasons for why people want to do work. But we're talking about people that are electing primarily to do a job and have the resources to be able to do it. That's 90% of the clients that we're going to be talking to. We have to build trust. The people that get the job versus the people that don't get the job are the people that built the most trust and made the greatest connection with those clients. Buzz, you've been having a lot of at-bats. Would you agree with that statement? You get the most trust and you make the greatest connection.
100%.
Okay. Right answer. I'll pay you later. So we want to make sure that we have a process for doing that. And again, just because I said process or that we planned it doesn't make it inauthentic. This is where I think a lot of people lose that, hey, if I'm planning on something about my relationship, does that make it inauthentic? And I want to ask you this question. If you are planning a big anniversary, my 20th anniversary is coming up not too long from now. And so my wife is hinting that I better really come through, right? Is it more authentic or better for her if I made it up on the spot what we're going to go do for that anniversary, or if I thought about it and planned it and I have intentionality behind it and I know the steps of what's going to happen and I've solved all the stuff ahead of time for that anniversary? Which one is more romantic? Which one gets the better result?
Option B.
Right?
Yeah.
Right? It does not change the authenticity. It doesn't change the romance that I didn't say, hey, I bought these tickets today. I just decided we're going to wherever, right? And, pack your bag all of a sudden and we'll figure out a babysitter for the kids while we're driving to the airport. That doesn't work. And so I want to contrast that because, again, I think our brains think that somehow if we're pre-planning, if we're pre-thinking about something, that makes it inauthentic or it's somehow less than. And I want to take that away from everybody here for this call as well. So remember, we're talking about two things. How do I have a plan? How do I do something that both makes a connection with the client and that builds trust? And this is our process. And so when I talk about building trust, I really want to give a definition, a working definition of what do I mean by trust. And I'm going to share my screen here so that we can all get this. And I've got a 4-part definition for you guys for what I believe really matters for doing this aspect of building trust with the client. And we're going to put this down here. The number one thing that we have is, I cannot figure out why this is, there we go. The number one thing that we have here is, in this process of building trust, is relationship. There has to be some kind of level of relationship, and I'm going to come back to some extra words to put some definition here for even these terms. But it's relationship plus time plus progress towards goals plus client experience. Okay? That's my definition of building trust. If we can put these 4 things together, we are building trust with the client. And it can start from day 1, or it could be on day 101 or 1001, and it doesn't necessarily matter. But these 4 elements are what we're talking about for building trust. Relationship over time plus actual real progression or progress towards goals plus client experience. And right off the bat, let me just ask, what do you guys think of that? When you see that, what goes through your mind when you see those 4 things? What are you thinking?
Relationship is probably the biggest. Well, they're all big, but we do a really good job at creating that relationship.
I
The
would
client
agree with that.
experience.
And I think that that's a large reason why you're seeing the success you're seeing, right? That you're very relationship oriented with your clients.
And that
Okay.
that leads directly to the last one, to client experience. They go hand in hand.
They absolutely go hand in hand. I think if I tried to make this shorter, but as I was thinking about it, I don't see any one of these that I could take away, right? I think this might be the tightest that you could make this kind of definition without losing something in the explanation, right? It isn't just relationship that it's a one-off thing. It takes time. It takes time to build a relationship. And relationship strength doesn't just happen without what happens over time plus over circumstances, right? The good, the bad, and the ugly. And so circumstances have to do with how do we handle those circumstances both proactively and in the moment with client experience. So if you took out client experience, you would not necessarily be having the same types of positive experiences that build relationship over time. It would be more haphazard, and you would have more issues that you're having to deal with. Now, as you deal with negative things and turn them into positive things, that does help build the relationship. But how much better if we can avoid most negative things altogether, right? However, we are driving towards something, and so I think there has to be visible progress towards goals. The client has to understand that there's actual progression, that when we say we are helping them, we are actually helping them, that we are actually hitting milestones, that we're actually taking their needs and motivations into account. And I'm choosing my words carefully. You're going to hear some of these words come up again later. But if we wanted to kind of talk about this overall, then I think that we would say that relationship has, if we were to put a little bit more definition here, we would say empathy is one of them, right? That we can put ourselves in their shoes. We understand where they're coming from. We're making some connection there. That's a part of relationship. If we said in this relationship, there was also reliability. There was reliability within the relationship, right? And there was actual demonstrated care, right? We're showing people that we can help them by actually helping them. There's actual, real, human to human, not to overemphasize, but we're actually showing love towards people. You know what I'm saying? In the real human side of things, that we are showing that we actually care about them, right? Even to the degree that it's not always comfortable and it's not always easy, right? Sacrificial love, sacrificial care, sacrificial service towards other people is a real thing. And so we show people how we do that, right? We build that relationship on empathy, reliability, and care. And I think that those are some of the words that we could put there. This is not an exhaustive list, but I wanted to put some things down there, okay? With time, I want to say that I think that it's predictable. That's an aspect of time, that somebody understands over time where we're coming from. So we can say it's even consistent and predictable and familiar. Okay? There's very few outliers of certain kinds of behavior that would hurt the relationship, right? It's predictable, we're consistent, it's familiar over time. This isn't that you gave your best foot forward, your best self on the first meeting, and then everything slips away as once they pay the bill, right? Or once they sign their contract or whatever else. There's no bait and switch that happens here. And if we're looking at progression towards the goal, I think that we have to think of in terms of milestones. And there's all kinds of ways that this could be milestones. This could be milestones in the sales process. This could be milestones in the build process. This could be milestones in your pre-construction process. Milestones anywhere where we're helping set expectations about we're going to accomplish a thing, including whether it's just a budgetary guidance meeting, right? When we say we're going to have this thing, we're going to accomplish something at this meeting, and you will be further along in the process than you were before. And these need to be related to client goals. These aren't just our goals and not just what we want. They have to be in service of the client. Progression towards the client's goals, because that's ultimately what we're trying to do. And so if we want to know what's progression towards the client's goals, what do we first have to know? What the client wants.
We have to know what they
vision.
want,
I call
what
it
the
their
outcome
vision.
is. The
Yeah.
vision. Exactly.
On a
You're right.
successful project, I call it define a successful project.
You are right, Hardy.
Vision and motives are a big part of understanding how to get them towards seeing their progression towards their goals, right? And when they're the ones that are blocking their progression towards their goals because they're delaying decisions or they're not understanding a process, then you need to have a way for them to communicate that to you so you can go back to delivering progress on their goals, progress towards their goals. This goes back to one of the things that we say, one of the number one deal killers that we see is an unintended silence gap, right? where there is some kind of miscommunication. The client wonders what's actually happening. They don't see the work behind the scenes. They don't know what the process is. They don't know how much work it actually is. So we sometimes have to break that down and make sure that we're communicating to them what we're doing on their behalf for their goals. And this happens during even the sales process. So this is how we build trust. Now, the opposite is true. We're going to hurt the trust if there is no progression, right? If they can't see their goals, or if they see that you're working towards your selfish goals, if they see that you are doing things that are selfishly motivated versus serving them. Those are the kinds of things. The opposites of these phrases are what hurt trust. And if we go over here to client experience, then we're talking about being proactive, not reactive. Proactive, expectations, communication, and we're going to call it, this is hard to fit in here, process transparency. Process transparency are part of client experience, okay? The proactive side of solving issues, having a process, having a plan, setting expectations so that they know what's happening with those things, and then communicating those expectations and where they stand within that process, and then having that actual process transparency. These are the steps. This is what we will do. This is what we're doing on behalf. So this is having to do with the proactive solving of the puzzle and communicating where they're at in the journey, right? Setting the expectations. We're planning this next thing as your milestone. That's the expectation. Here's the communication about that expectation. Here's our way that we're saying this fits within the big scope of things. And we're going to have empathy and care as we head towards that for you. And we're going to show that we are giving you predictable, consistent, familiar behaviors over time. Right? That we are serving you the same way over time. This is what we mean by having that trust builder definition, that the way that we can build trust through these 4 elements. What do you guys think about that? Tell me what you like from this definition.
It's a lot of work, man. It's a lot. The problem is, yeah, it's hard to go to your team and be like, all right, guys, here's things. We need empathy and milestones. Nope, there's 10 more things in addition to that.
It's
And by the way, we also still have to build it.
Exactly.
It is a lot of work. And you're not wrong. But what's the outcome of that work? I know you guys have experience and examples that lock this in for you. Mike and Mayor, you guys have seen this before, maybe not in this exact format, but what's your experience? What are you seeing real time happen with your relationships and your client experience as you guys have implemented this?
Well, I can give you 2 examples in kind of night and day differences. Or one with the RV garage, we've really, really established that relationship. We've fostered it, the whole entire time on the job. And now this cat trusts us so much that we're buying him a $4,000 snow blower for his long ass driveway that we just finished. So, and the second example I have is do all of these things, try to keep the client in the know, and then all of a sudden my client wants to start knowing everything, like all the electrical, why we are doing this, why we are doing that. And I will tell you, definitely tried my patience because that's why you frickin' hire me, is to be the expert. And I had to go, yeah, had to keep things in check in that regard.
So this whole setup is wildly dependent also on picking the right client. Success of this is picking the right client. Is how I feel about it.
I think that there's a big part of that that is correct. Like, this doesn't solve every problem that you're ever going to have. This is not, again, this is not magic. This is what we're trying to do with intentionality, though, and try and remove as many variables as we can, right? And the fact that Hardy said, hey, this is hard, that's why it's your moat. Because there are builders that cannot deliver on this. The very fact that it is hard and the very fact that you can get better at it while other people just simply want to be transactional and other people want to just do it the old way is what sets you apart. So there is an element that is very true, that not everybody will appreciate this the same amount, and not everybody is able to deliver this at the same level, and that's okay. This is an ideal that we're setting up here, and your own ability to deliver this is going to ebb and flow to some degree, right? But if we can highlight it and we can say, hey, there is a way that we can build on this. There is a way that we can get better at doing what we're doing. There is a way that we can increase how we communicate so that we give a better client experience and we build more trust. Again, some clients respond better to this, and your best clients will respond really well to this. Does that make sense? Okay.
Cool.
What else would you say?
I was thinking the same thing as Mike said, though. It's kind of like looking at all of that communication, thinking, all right, yeah, but you do have to sort of not keep them in the dark, but put some limits around how much you're communicating with them. Because basically, if you just read your list, it would just be like, yeah, just spend all day talking to your client. You're building trust.
No,
It's more time. And we have to figure out, okay, how do we do those things, but still like keep it reasonable? I mean, also you have to figure out, I mean, just looking at the list, it's all the positive things. It's all the things you could do. That could be like, hey, let's go out to lunch twice a week. Like, that's going to build a lot of trust, but obviously you can't afford to do that. So we have to figure out how to sort of optimize all the things on the list there without getting carried away. And then also, as Mike said, without without having the client, who in my experience, typically they have more time than I do. Start thinking, oh, these guys are so available that I'm gonna just start pounding them with questions.
Look, our main point is the 4 top words or pieces. This, right? This is what builds trust. These are simply descriptors or factors within each of those things. So I don't want you to have to think, oh my gosh, did I do the checklist of 13 things that are on this list? I want you to think in terms of relationship, time, progress towards goals, client experience, right? These are elements that we add into this that as we get better, we're showing these things more often. We're surfacing them intentionally more often. But yes, this is how Jason is changing his business by preloading the emails let me back up. He's predefined what many of his milestones are and pre-written the expectation setting emails that help orient the client where those are, to set the expectations and to communicate with the client so that they know where they are. He's pre-written those emails so that when that milestone gets hit, those emails fire off, or somebody in his office fires those off intentionally, on purpose, on time, without it being a big drag for anybody else, right? It's not that we have to make this up as we go all the time. So a big part of this for Jason and how he's doing it is truly understanding how his process works, which is part of defining your client experience or your process for success, right? and making it so that your client can truly understand where they're at, because you've given that process transparency, or you have that, you've predefined so many of the different aspects. There was one more thing that I was going to write down on this sheet before we go away, because I think it's really important.
Also, I want to address, like, a lot of times when clients are chasing you for information, it's because they don't feel connected. There has been a gap in one of these processes, or they're trying to reestablish trust, that they somehow have lost trust that you have everything under control, or that there isn't anything to worry about, etc. But there are exceptions to that rule. Clients who, like you said, Hardy, they just have more time, and they are going to focus on the thing that is the biggest event in their life. And so those are the clients that, no matter what, you're not going to answer all their questions. You're not going to have enough time in the day for them. They're the proverbial guy that sits in his lawn chair and watches the roofers all day long put the roof on the house, right? Like, there are just some of those clients who are the exception to the rule, and it may not be about trust or about predictability or that you're making progress towards the goals. It's just who they are.
But I think the predictability part is where you can, because you can just define it. Hey, we're gonna have weekly progress
Yeah.
meetings.
Absolutely.
And,
That's a huge
know,
part.
yeah, and also, like, don't text me. And, I mean, I have that document, how to communicate, how we're gonna communicate together.
Right. How to be a great
So,
client. These
yeah.
are the ground rules. This is what makes it work for both of us.
And here's your company cam app, and you can just, like, bug my superintendent instead of me.
1-800 not Hardy.
I just want to add to this list that there are different types of trust. And so I'm adding, again, a little bit more shades or facets to this diamond that we're looking at here. If we would say that, each of these things gives us more information, or exposes a little bit more light, or puts a little bit more sparkle or brilliance into this idea, then there are at least 3 different types of trust that we're talking about. Competency trust. Competence trust. Can you do what you say you do, right? How can I judge whether you are actually the authority or the expert? And again, that's not done on one simple thing that happens over time. Competence is something that happens over time. There's character trust, right? Are you going to do the right thing? And does it matter if you do the right thing once, or, again, consistently, predictably over time? That when you bring me bad news, you're not necessarily sugarcoating it. You're not trying to hide it. That there is good character, that you are going to actually do the right thing when it counts, right? And that's part of how we communicate, how we set expectations, how we're being proactive, how we have process transparency. Did we hit our goals? What is actually happening when we talk to the clients? And then the last one that I'm going to put down here is that there's actual care, trust, that you will actually take care of them. And that is not just something selfish, but is more altruistic, and where it really counts, you are actually going to do the right thing for them. Okay?
Right.
All right. We're going to move on and go back into relatively quickly here now our relationship builder side of things. And I really want to make this so that you guys, I'm going to set this up a little bit differently than how I have shown this before, because I want this to be a little bit easier for everybody to understand the progression here. So we're going to go like this. And we're going to go like this. When we want to make a connection with a client, So this is the, whoops. When we want to make a connection, we have 3 problems that often come up. And some of the problems are that our clients are weary and wary. So when we enter the sales process, oftentimes they are exhausted trying to make decisions. They're exhausted thinking about the options, doing research, trying to make decisions, right? They are weary of wading through information. And they are wary of people that are trying to, let's just say they're wary of the charlatans, right? They're wary of the kind of bad actors that the news talks about. So they are being very careful that somebody's going to sucker them into something. They're very wary against sales tactics or high pressure kinds of situations, which is part of the reason why I say I am so anti-sales training that's about magic words that manipulates the customer into some kind of like high pressure outcome, whatever that is, right? Because clients are really sensitive to that, especially if it's very early in the process. They will shut you down fast. Can you all agree with me on that? Have you ever experienced that before yourself as a purchaser, as a buyer, as a consumer, where somebody comes at you hard and you're like, nope, sorry, time out, bye-bye. No, thank you.
And let me give you guys an example of how that can be different in just a few words. The pressure close is, well, now that we've gone over that, is there any reason you don't want to move forward? Right? You're giving them an option out, but you're basically saying like, we're ready to go. You're going to sign here. If you just change that to, this has been great. What's the next step? You're asking them if they're ready to move forward, and they're going to turn to you and say, well, we're not sure. What would you recommend? Or we have this idea, or we're not clear on this. It keeps the discussion going without the high pressure sales tactic. And that's one of the most, basic sales things that you will learn is if you do any of those courses, or you've done any kind of sales training, or focused on the Sandler method, or any of those things, is right. You're going to give them some sort of pain point to work through, and you're going to be the savior. But if you just ask them, well, what's the next step? They don't know. They're waiting for you to be the trusted guide and show them. And there's just that difference of building that relationship and addressing the fact that they are weary, they are wary, they know these sales tactics, they're familiar with them, they didn't just fall off the turnip truck. So give them something different.
The other way that the other problem that happens that you're going to find is that people get inundated with the same messaging. Everybody says the same stuff. So how can they tell the difference between somebody, right? Everybody says the same thing. So how you like, how do I pick? What do I know? How is this going to work, right? They get weary and wary partly because everything sounds exactly the same. What does every contractor promise?
Value and price.
We'll do quality work.
We'll
Right?
do quality work at a
No
great
job's
price.
too small, right? Or hey, don't you like me? Don't you think I'm a handsome bloke? Don't you think that I have a great personality? Don't you think that my 20 years in the business makes it so that I'm obviously the choice? Don't you think that our family business, because we're a family business, means that you should pick us? It's the same stuff from builders all over the place for years and years. And if I were to go pick 50 websites, 48 of them would sound exactly the same. You know what I'm saying? So this is where we have to figure out a different way of being able to present, a different way that cuts through that same kind of messaging. And so the last problem is a flip side to hearing the same message is they start to worry when you start to say something that might be different. Well, what about the other guy? And he says this, right? When you start to say something different, that might make a connection, but it also brings up the next problem, which is that the other guy says this. The other guy said I should do it this way. The other guy had a different way of going about things. The other guy did a price. The other guy didn't charge me for this, whatever it might be. And so when we realize that we're up against these three things, these three big problems right from the get-go, and continuing, right? And continuing. You don't solve this once. You have to continually keep these three things in mind for what you're trying to do. You realize how important it is that you have answers for this. Somebody give me an example of when you've had to deal with these kinds of three questions early in the sales relationship. Hardy dealt with it with his story this morning, right? The other guys said, no, I'm not going to do it that way. We don't do it that way. Everybody else does it this way. That was a version of the other guy, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
What else?
Where have you run across the same messaging and feeling like you're in a you have no point of differentiation with your clients? Mayor, have you seen that?
You know, I'm sure I have. Nothing's just like totally coming to the top of my head.
That's fine. I saw you
Totally.
nodding, though, for the weary and wary and the decision
Yeah.
fatigue and some of that. So you have a story about that, because I saw you and Mike nodding your head pretty good about that one.
Oh, people, I mean, just even during the PSA process, people are so exhausted about making decisions, and things can move really quickly and then come to a screeching halt when they get really tired.
Yeah, it's true. And imagine where they're at. You know, one of the things that's true as a change in our industry over the last 15 years is that people are much deeper into their selection process when they actually call you. It used to be that you had to actually talk to a salesperson to get information. And so people would call much earlier in their discovery process to try and figure out who they want to talk to. But now they're going to go read all your reviews. They're going to look at all your social media content. They're going to look at your website, and they're making many more selection decisions way before they ever get to you. So their research process, we have to understand this is just the times in which we live and the access to information that we have now. It has drastically shifted over the last 15 years, where they are much deeper. They've done much more research by the time they actually contact you. Mostly. Some people obviously just go, hey, let's do this. In fact, I heard yesterday a story about some people that were at their vacation home in the town that their vacation home was in, and they decided that they needed to do some updates. They wanted to talk to a builder. They just Googled it, and they found out that one builder was 2 minutes closer drive than the other builder, and they just went and knocked on the front door of that office. That's pretty spur of the moment, but it's also pretty rare, right? That's not typically how this goes. People want to do the research, and they're going to be much deeper in the process. So they're already coming to you with that weary and wary element, and the fact that they've gotten a lot of that same messaging where we have to cut through that. Okay. So let's go into how we're going to make this work for us instead of against us. How do we flip this around? And we'll use some of the rest of our time here quickly to talk about this. Instead of weary and wary, we want to shift this to being that we want to Make a connection. This is literally, whoops, wrong color. We want to make the connection with the client. Instead of them being weary and wary, we want to exhibit all the signs of being trustworthy that we talked about. That there can be some immediate rapport and relationship, and that we understand their true motives and vision. All the things that we just talked about up here start to come into play immediately when we can try to purposely make a connection. And this is partly what we mean by not just having bricks and sticks discussions. This goes beyond bricks and sticks. This means making a human connection with another person. I know sometimes for us that sit behind desks and are more comfortable with 2x4s and circular saws, that sometimes is hard. Okay?
Or
This-
just the sheer fact that, you know, this is the 42nd house I've built, and it's hard to be excited about it because it's kind of like all the rest of the projects. I know there's going to be some headaches, there's going to be some rough spots, there's going to be some breakthroughs. How do you make that connection? Because we are also weary and wary. How do we show
Not
excitement?
wrong.
How
Yeah.
do we show excitement and be like, this is awesome. We're so like we've been waiting to do a project like this. It's been a long time since we've done an RV garage, and we have some cool ideas from our last one that could make this one even better. Right? Like that just changes the client's experience of like, gosh, we've been talking about this forever and we've been on Pinterest picking out stuff and blah blah blah. It changes that connection changes when they see your excitement and your involvement.
So we're going to say make a connection. The next one is pretty obvious. If it's same messaging, then we have to differentiate.
Yep.
We have to say something different to get their attention. We have to get something that's going to cut through all the noise that they've heard, right? And what do you think this is? The last one is for the other guys. It's exactly what Hardy did on, or attempted to do on his call with those clients that wanted to go the other way. Oops.
I'm still gonna do it.
Right.
We
Right.
advocate.
We advocate. We
We
tell them why.
advocate for them for how we think they are going to get the best answer or the best goal or the best approach. We're going to be their best advocate. We're going to take all of our expert knowledge and years of experience to say, we understand what you want, and this is the best way that we can understand for you to get there, right? And you are like a doctor. So instead of saying you're a salesman, we want you, or a salesperson, we want you to say that you're more like a doctor that's listened to the symptoms, done all the testing, and now is going to show up with what the actual prognosis or the actual diagnosis and the prognosis. This is how we're going to diagnose what the actual issue is and how we're going to proceed so that you can be healed.
Right.
I want you to
And-
take that mindset, which also takes this away from being icky about sales to just saying, I'm taking everything that I know to hear about what's going on and saying, you know what? You do have this problem. And yes, we can help you with that. But all you need to do is take these 3 pills, have a minor surgery, and follow my physical therapy program for 6 weeks, and then you're going to be all better. Right? That's how we advocate for them. This is the solution that we're proposing for you. And is a doctor ever going to say something? My analogy may break down here a little bit, depending on
Uh-oh.
your perspective, but is the doctor ever going to prescribe something that's wildly different than what he actually believes is really the true case of something, right? Is he going to lead you astray on purpose? No, because then he gets personally held responsible for that and it hurts him, right? So he can build that trust and those kinds of things, and he doesn't feel bad about it. He's not trying to just do something that would further hurt you. In fact, they take their oath, right? Do no harm. Their whole point is to not hurt anybody further than they already are. All right. How do we actually do this? And this is going to be a process that we can go through relatively quickly here, but there's going to be 9 steps. And I really want you to think about this, that at any given point, you could be following these 9 steps, plus or minus something. But every conversation that you have with your clients could have some or more of these 9 steps. And by highlighting them, I'm showing how we can have a plan, how we can be intentional. I'm not saying that by saying there's a plan, we're somehow taking any spontaneity out of it. I'm not saying that it kills the mood and the romance of the deal or the people. It's not inauthentic to say that, or manipulative to say that I am trying to actually connect to another human being on an emotional and logical level at the same time. Right? It's just humans to humans. So there's nothing shady about this. There's nothing that is, again, there's no magic words here. It's just thinking through the process of how I can communicate. It's a framework for you to go weave your way in and out of as you actually have real conversations. Does it mean that you're going to have this thing open in front of you on a sheet of paper and you're going to woodenly follow this list of 9 things as you have conversations with your client? No, you're not going to do that. But could you practice your talk track with your partner or with your kid or with your superintendent or anybody that will listen, including yourself in the mirror? Can you take this and practice? How do I weave my talk track so that I'm hitting each one of these as much as possible? You could practice bringing these elements into the conversation. Okay, we ready?
The best, just real quick, the best way to get really good at this and understand it is to have discussions with your team. Like Rick mentioned, your superintendent, with your executive assistant, with your superintendent, your project managers, that you guys are talking about how we do this and make it a core belief of the company that we build relationships first. We don't build houses before we build relationships. And by having those discussions and working through this and sharing this information, however it works, whether it's like, hey, we're going to go watch the recording from Contractor Convergence, or you book a 20 so that we can all discuss it, or you guys have a meeting and work through it in your own terms. Having your teams understand this and know you may be the person presenting it, but they are the people that deal with it for the rest of the project, right? That after the client says yes, they're the ones that essentially have to deliver this and have to understand where in the process you are and what you're doing and how you're doing it. So it's absolutely, I think the best way to do this is by tying in your teams and helping them understand and process this information in their own way and in your own words and in your own process. So when we say practice this, really set aside time. One of your CEO blocks in the next couple of weeks should be like, hey, let's unpack this. Let's make sure that everybody's on the same page.
I'll add one other element to this. Record yourself. Record your practice. Record
Bingo.
that. Put yourself in the mirror. Record those company meetings. Record it at the dinner table if that's where you're going to practice with your wife or something like that, right? Or your partner or whatever, where you can record that conversation and just listen to yourself back. Will it be highly uncomfortable for the first few times you do that? Yes. Is it really weird to listen to your own voice back? Yes. It took me a long time to get used to hearing my own voice speaking back to me. Okay. You will learn a massive amount simply by doing that. Just by practicing and recording. Okay. We got to get through these steps. So let's talk about this really quickly. There is no rocket surgery here. It should be very easy to follow along with what we're talking about because we've already laid the groundwork. Okay. What were you going to say, Kyler?
I said rapid fire. You got 5 minutes.
Here we go. We're going to build personal rapport.
Exactly.
And I'm going to put in parentheses because Kyler called this out, and I think it's very, very important. Positive excitement. Okay? We're really happy to have this conversation with you. Now, there's a way of phrasing that minimizes you and your expertise, and it sounds like you were desperate. I'm so glad you're here. I'm so glad you walked through the door. We don't mean it that way. We're excited to do the project. We're excited to meet new people. We're excited to have another opportunity to do something cool together. That's where we're talking. And personal rapport building, and you can find articles about this. You can go down the rabbit hole about how to have conversations with people, how to be better at chit chat and small talk. Find some actual real connection with the people, what they're doing, where they came from, where they grew up, their family situation. Look for something like, are they dog people, cat people? How can we build quickly a little bit of personal rapport? Okay, give me a thumbs up if you understand what I'm talking about there. Got it. Done. Next one, we need to make sure that the client feels seen and heard. So this is client seen and heard. They have to understand that this is about them, not about you. That their goals, their motives, their desires are the center of the conversation, and that you have listened to them, maybe to the degree that you can explain what they're after better than they can actually articulate it themselves. How would they know that you know it better than they do? Because of the key phrase that I just said. You can articulate it. You say it back to them. That's the definition of what we talk about when we talk about circle sales, that you circle back to the things that they're telling you are most important and make sure that they hear you say that, right? By the way, personal rapport, this is also like use their names. People are flattered when you use their actual names, and that builds a huge amount of trust and connection simply by using their actual names.
Frequently.
Not like weirdly, just
Good. A few times
recognize
in the conversation.
that you would purposely address something to this one spouse and use their name versus another spouse and call them out and use their name in conversation. Intentionally calling out each party. Right? This is also a tendency that I can see happening in sales meetings where more focus goes on the one spouse over another spouse. And we want to avoid that too. We want to make sure that everybody's seen and heard. Okay? Lastly, here we have client pain and fears. This is similar but different. Client pain and fears. We need to know what kind of pain they're in. We need to know why they're making the decision to make change now as opposed to some other time, right? Something is going on within their circumstances, their timeline, their situation, their life, some event. Something is happening where they need to make a change. And so we need to know what those are and again, be able to communicate those back. If we do that, we make a connection. We make a connection. We need to differentiate. So now we're going to talk about how do we say that our messaging, how do we say that our process and what we do is different? And one is the highest level, the most important thing is that we've built our company around client experience. And so we communicate the benefits of having that client experience. What are the client experience benefits of working with us? That it's not just the outcome that we're after. It's not just bricks and sticks. It's that the process needs to be stressful and helpful. And guess what? To a weary and wary person, is that like water on a parched earth? We will help you. We will help you make decisions. We will cut through all the noise. We will hold your hand. We will give you the white glove experience. Now we sound different and we actually are different. Similarly, we have a process for success. And we communicate not every single step. We don't have to communicate everything. This isn't an information dump, but somewhere, somehow, we are intentionally connecting what's going on to the next steps, and that we've designed it to be that way, or that we will handle it in our process for success. That process for success should be coming up often, right? Yes, that's exactly why we have our process for success the way that it is. Because we are a client experience driven company, we have our process for success so that we handle that automatically. It's just built into the process, right? So glad you brought that up. Okay. Lastly, over here, this is important, guys. We paint the future. What does the future look like working with you? And you have to paint that image. You have to paint that picture. What does working with you look like? And you have to put it in terms of benefits. You have to put it in terms of emotion. You have to put it in terms of the outcome, the goal. Well, how do we know what the outcome and goal and emotions are that we should be talking about? Well, because you just heard them say what's super important to them right here. And so we know how to be able to paint the future for exactly what matters to this client, because you listen to them, which is, again, how you cut through the noise and how you put water on parched earth and you speak directly to somebody, their exact needs. Now, again, really quickly, just talking these last three elements. This is going to sound funny, but over here where we need to now advocate for them, we've painted the future, and now we're going to say, how do we get there? The future is you're pain-free. The future is you've worked with us. We've made the decisions. You feel comfortable. We're never going to push you towards, whatever decision that works for us. We want the decision that works for you, however you want to say that, right? Now we talk about the elephants. Have you guys ever had a conversation or been in a situation where you're talking with clients and there is a really big elephant in the room? Something that is unaddressed that you're not really sure how to address it? Guess what? Because we're building trust and because we're talking about proactive expectations and process transparency, and because we want to show relationship and actual care and competence trust and character trust, we're going to address those things head on. We're not going to hide them. We're not going to try and put the elephant under the rug. We're going to address whatever the elephants are in the room, and we're going to talk about them. However, we're not just going to leave it there. We address the elephants, but we can also redirect the conversation into a more positive frame. So this is what we call the story time redirect, where you get to use a story, whether it's a positive or negative story, switch talking from the elephants into a story. This is why we do what we do, so that you avoid that elephant in the room. Or this is what happened to a client that came to us but didn't want to follow our process, and we met them up 9 months ago or 9 months later, and they're still no further in their progress because they didn't want to follow this, but they ended up having that bad thing that they were trying to avoid because they went with the lowest bidder, or because they didn't follow this process. They got in, unfortunately, really overwhelmed, and the builder and them had a falling out, and the progress stalled, right? Or whatever other nightmare. You could say it in a positive or negative sense. And so we use a story to still help us advocate for them. The reason why you do this is because of this. And when we're willing to be transparent about those things and we're willing to show our expertise, you're building that connection even more, so that finally you ultimately will write the prescription. And you'll be able to say, now, based on everything that we've said, this is what we're proposing, that we work like this, that our next meetings be like this, the next steps be like this, that you sign the pre-construction agreement so that we can start this process with you, and you move forward with whatever the solution is. Whatever you're able to get them to agree to, because we're not selling the whole thing, we're only selling the next step. We just need them to agree to that next step. Is it a further conversation? Is it the ability to say, I need this over that? Whatever it is, we just now we say, okay, here's the action that we need to take based on this. Is there any of this that's high pressure? Is there any of this that's magic words? Is there any of this that sounds slimy? Is there any of this that's manipulation? No, it's designed to be that way on purpose. It's simply a framework for you to weave and dodge. And I think the progression is that you follow the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. But depending on where you are with the relationship with somebody, you might skip a step, or you might do something out of order, or you might remember, hey, I need to actually still cover that thing, one of those topics somewhere, right?
And-
you can weave and bob. It's fine.
As long as it's fit in there, you know, they may bring up the other guy right away, and you may have to go back to building that rapport and hearing what their issues are. That's fine. As long as you check the boxes and understand that you've done these things, you're going to end up with a very high success rate. And it's because it's building a relationship. It's not because we're trying to put somebody in the win column and, you know, artificially sell somebody that isn't ready for our process or doesn't want what we have to offer. It's because we found that we're aligned and we've made a connection and we've built the trust so that they say, that sounds good. We're ready to go to the next step with you. And they may not know what the next step is. That's why asking them what's next is they may know, or they may defer to you as the expert. Anything to add, guys? What are your thoughts? What are things that you've seen that work? What are processes that you're invigorated by in looking at this? What's your next step now that we've covered this? Where do you guys see that this can be implemented and helpful for you?
I can tell you, we have to go sell a really nice PSA, and it gives us a lot of good talking.
Yes, it
Oh,
does.
right.
This is amazing. Perfect timing and a great
Perfect
way to get the
timing.
refresh. That's
Yeah.
awesome.
And I really think we try really hard to hit on a lot of these points and earning their trust out of the gates
For
and
sure.
kind of building that rapport and that relationship with them. No, it's
You're right, Kyler. It's a good refresh. But
Absolutely. And a great time to
Um,
look at it.
mhm.
always.
Is there any part of this that's like scary? Nah.
You know, coming up against the other guy is always an interesting talking point with clients because you know, Mike's there's 10 different ways you can reach one outcome in construction, right? Everybody's got a little bit different process and preferred method.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, it's tough when you're trying to convince, you know, your process is more successful than the other person's. Try not to go down that road too often, but you know, it does come up and try to skirt it, but explain how, you
sometimes
know,
it's a rabbit hole.
yeah, it can be.
And sometimes you just have the stories like that. Let that be the warning. You just tell stories. You don't have to. Stories are disarming, but they also stick with people. People remember stories, right? And if you're telling them you can avoid pain by doing this, and here's the story, here's the example, you're demonstrating your expertise, your experience, your authority on the subject, and you're helping them say, oh yeah, that's what we said we were scared of. And you're directly addressing their fears and pains. So it's not necessarily that hard if we're doing it in a non-confrontational way. That seems like we're just directly knocking the competition, right? Here's our
Like-
experience in why we picked what we do. Give them the why, right? We've tried to do things the old way and it didn't work. And here's why. Here's why, here's the stories we've heard from clients that chose not to go with us, but went with the other guy and we beat up again, right? We're still friends. Like we wanted to make sure that we're still friendly with them and not, that we avoid each other at the grocery store and go down different aisles, right? People can identify with that. right?
Yeah.
Great point. All right.
Awesome.